Hi friends, in this video we will compare and contrast GATE CSE 2021 Set 2 versus Set 1 and understand intuitively how the marks normalization itself will work. Again, as many of you might already know, for Set 1 we have already published answers for 64 out of 65 questions on our website. We will provide a link in the description section and in the comment section for all the answers that we have already provided. Again, for one question out of the 65 questions, we have provided the answer, but we don't know the options. So if anybody knows the options, please share them with us so that we can complete Set 1. On our channel, we have also published a detailed analysis of Set 1. Now coming to Set 2, we only have 50 out of 65 questions, right? So for these 50 questions for which we know the questions and the options, we have already published the solutions on our website. Again, we'll provide the link in the description and the comment section. We don't have 15 questions yet. So if you can recall some of these questions, please share these additional questions with us at gatecse@appliedroots.com so that we can cover all the 65 or 64 to 65 questions, if possible all the questions, and do a thorough analysis of Set 2 itself. But we have studied the 50 out of 65 questions and done some analysis to compare and contrast Set 1 and Set 2. Now, at a very broad level, Set 1, we concluded that it's a moderately hard paper. It's not a hard paper. It's a moderate paper, but the questions were trickier and there were more tricky questions than GATE CSE 2020. As far as Set 2 is concerned, because we've already seen 50 out of 65 questions, from these 50 questions, this paper from the hardness level itself, the questions were moderate, but they were fairly lengthy. Because the questions were lengthy, because it would take more time to read the question and solve the question, this paper becomes relatively harder than Set 1. Again, if you look at the individual questions themselves, the questions were not very hard. The questions were actually moderate level, right? But they were lengthy. That's why they would take more time to solve. And hence, most likely students who attempted Set 2 would get slightly lower marks. And these marks would get normalized. We'll see how that works. Again, this is analysis based on just 50 out of 65 questions. We still don't have 15 questions and we don't know how hard those questions are. As soon as we get it, we will do a detailed analysis of Set 2 itself. Now, with the knowledge that we have, with all the 65 questions for Set 1 and the 50 questions for Set 2, let's compare and contrast. Okay, cool. So, the biggest question, we have got a lot of students asking us this question. Am I doomed if I got Set 2? Again, remember, how were Set 1, Set 2 assigned? When you applied for GATE, you were randomly, again, the students were randomized, which means you were randomly assigned either Set 1 or Set 2. So this is a standard process in statistics called randomization, which is used here. Now students are like, okay, if I got randomly assigned to Set 2, am I doomed if I got Set 2? Because Set 2 questions were relatively harder because it was a lengthier paper. And the short answer to that is don't worry too much about it. We'll explain why. Now let's take an example. This is an example from GATE CSE 2017. So we have talked to some of the toppers in GATE CSE 2017, also collected some data. Let me just share it with you. In GATE CSE 2017, Set 1 was relatively harder than Set 2. Right? Let's see the marks of some students and how marks got normalized or scaled up and scaled down. Let's see that, right? Remember, Set 1 was harder, Set 2 is easier in 2017. In 2021, Set 2 is harder or lengthier than Set 1. Relatively speaking, Set 2 was harder because the questions were lengthy, right? So now let's look at it. Rank 1, AAR 1, when we got some of this data, he expected that he would have got about 79 marks in question paper. Again, he attempted the harder question paper, remember. Okay, instead of calling Set 1, Set 2 to avoid confusion, All India Rank 1 in GATE CSE 2017 roughly got about 79 marks, maybe 1/3 mark or half a mark here and there. Right? This was the mark secured by him in his set. But this set was a harder set. So as part of normalization, his marks got increased by plus 7.38. And his final normalized marks were 86.38. And that's because he had a harder paper, right? His marks got bumped up. So he got plus 7 marks. Look at this, a significant increase. Now rank 33, he actually secured 77.33 marks on the easier paper. Because he attempted an easier paper, his marks would get bumped down. So minus 2.61 was added to this, or in other words, 2.61 marks were subtracted from his score and his final final normalized marks, again, I'm not talking about gate score, that's a different metric altogether. His normalized marks were 74.72. Look at this. Somebody who got the harder paper got a bump up. Somebody who got an easier paper got a bump down. Okay, again, you can look at these numbers. There are two other numbers that we have. Somebody who got rank 7, he got only 73 marks, but his paper was the harder paper amongst the two papers that were there. Because he had a harder paper, his marks got bumped up. He got plus 6.42. Somebody who got rank 9, his actual score, because he scored on an easier paper, he scored 82.33 marks, and his score got bumped down, and his marks basically, not score, his normalized marks or rescaled marks were 79.29. So if you look at it, the rank 9 guy actually got more marks, but since the paper was easier, his marks got bumped down and he became rank 9. Rank 7 guy got actually 73 marks, but since he got 73 marks on a harder paper, his marks got bumped up, right? Again, the amount of this bumping up depends on a lot of mathematical factors. I'll give you the intuition on how it works because we don't have the actual empirical data. Right? Again, I'm sure people who set the GATE question paper, the GATE examiners are fairly smart engineers and mathematicians who can figure this out. Okay, cool. So in an essence, again, one more very important observation when we talk to students who took the GATE CSE 2017, students who got the harder set 1, they were happier on the results day in general because they didn't expect to get better marks because they thought, oh, hey, I had a harder paper, I did not perform well, but that's okay. Everybody will be fairly compared in GATE. Whether you have 2 sets or whether you have 4 sets, everybody gets compared on the same scale. So because people who had the harder set felt that they did not score good marks, they ended up being happier on the results day because their marks got scaled up and they got better ranks than they expected. Okay. So let's understand this marks normalization process intuitively. Again, I'm not explaining the whole detailed step-by-step math here. The general idea is this. Imagine that this axis is the marks obtained. Let's assume this blue curve is the distribution of marks obtained on the harder paper. This yellow curve here is the distribution of marks obtained on the easier paper. As it's common sense, because the paper is easier, everybody would score typically more marks and hence this distribution is to the right side of the blue distribution. Common sense, right? Now, the GATE examiners has complete data of lakhs of students who have taken the harder paper and the easier paper. So they can combine both this data and also plot the distribution of marks of students by combining the data from both set 1 and set 2. So this pink curve here is the distribution of marks when you combine data from students who took the harder and the easier paper, right? This is how, again, this data, again, I'm just drawing a simple model here to explain you how this works intuitively. Okay, cool. Now what happens is the GATE examiners will try to move this distribution to the right. So everybody who has taken the harder paper, their marks would get bumped up so that this distribution is as close as possible to the pink distribution. That's why their marks would get bumped up. Right? Similarly, the students who have taken the easier paper, their distribution also will be moved to the left so that it coincides with this red or the pink curve as closely as possible. So somebody who has gotten these many marks, let's assume this point represents the number of marks scored on the harder paper. Because this whole distribution is moved to the right, his marks will get bumped up. Somebody who has taken the easier paper, because this whole yellow distribution is moved to the left, it's adjusted to the left, right? So his marks would get bumped down. Again, remember that in the real world, these distributions may not be Gaussian distribution. Again, we don't have the data because we don't have the data of marks secured by the lakhs of students who have taken the GATE exam, right? So you need that actual empirical or observed data of lakhs of students to actually draw these distributions. These distributions need not be normal or Gaussian. I've just drawn it to give you a sense of how to think about it intuitively. Now, again, this is a very, very well-studied problem in statistics and data science. Again, as somebody who has worked in machine learning and data science for almost a decade, I know this problem very well. Actually, there are multiple valid solutions. There are a lot of solutions to this problem. ranging from classical parametric statistics, like you assume a distribution, you fit a distribution and things like that. There are also methods in non-parametric statistics where you don't make any distributional assumptions. You use things like medians and percentiles to solve the problem. Again, this is a very popular interview question that you get asked in top product-based companies if you come from a statistics background. Imagine you are a PhD in statistics and you interview for a data science or a machine learning role at top product-based companies. This is actually an interview question, a very nice interview question, because I've been through some of these interviews myself. It's a very nice interview question. Again, this is a very, very well-studied problem. There is a lot of mathematics research on this. So what GATE examiners will do, remember, don't forget that GATE examiners are professors at top universities. They're phenomenally good engineers, mathematicians, and statisticians. They know this very well. So the most important thing that you have to observe and understand is GATE examiners will try to be fair to both set 1 and set 2. They know all the parametric statistical techniques and non-parametric statistical techniques to adjust this. And some students have this confusion that what if only the toppers marks are taken? Only the toppers marks in set 1 or set 2 are taken to adjust. That is never done in practice, because the topper might be a brilliant student and who could be an outlier. This is called as outlier problem in statistics. So don't worry that only the toppers mark or the first rankers marks will be taken in set 1 and set 2 and then everything gets normalized. That is never done. And the professors who are the examiners for GATE, they know this very well. They're some of the best minds of India, right? So typically what they would do is they would take data from many toppers, maybe 10 toppers or 100 toppers or 500 or 1000 toppers, so that the data does not have the outlier problem, and they will use multiple aggregate statistics. So they will use things like the mean, standard deviation, medians, 99th percentile, maybe 99.9th percentile. They will use a lot of these techniques to adjust the scores. Again, there are many, again, I'm not guessing what strategy they might actually apply, because it's there are a lot of valid strategies. I'm sure they would pick the most sensible strategy for the GATE examination itself, right? So in an essence, don't worry about the marks normalization. Everyone will be compared fairly. I just wanted to make that point very clear, right? Don't panic right now. Let's wait for the results day. Don't just assume that I got a very hard paper, so I am doomed. No, you might be the happier guy on the results day, right? So this is the process of normalizing data from multiple sets is a very well-known problem. So don't worry about it. That's very important. Again, for 2021, it could so happen that set 2 students who attempted set 2, which is a harder paper, you might be the happier folk on the results day, just like it happened in 2017. So don't worry too much about it. And we cannot predict exactly how many marks you will get bumped up or bumped down, because we don't have the empirical data with us right now. Right? If you had the data of all the lakhs of students, we can fit some distributions, do some statistics on it and get it. We don't know exactly the empirical data, so let's leave it to the experts who are GATE examiners to do that work for us. Cool. Now, very importantly, in 2021, if you attempted the easier set, again, a lot of you might have attempted the easier set, just be prepared that most likely your marks will reduce. Again, your marks reduction will happen based on the empirical data and the distributions of the data. But don't worry about it. Right? Suppose you might, let's assume you're getting some 75 marks. Your marks might get slightly bumped down. But don't worry about it. It is only to give a fair comparison of all students who have attempted both set 1 and set 2. So don't panic if you have taken set 1 and be discouraged that your marks will get bumped down. Don't worry too much about it now. Okay? So whether you have taken set 1 or set 2, the normalization, which is data driven, because there are hundreds of thousands of data points, there are lakhs of students who have taken set 1 and set 2. So there is ample data to do the normalization in a very sensible and statistically valid manner. Let's leave it to the GATE examiners. They're experts at this game. Okay, cool. So one other very important point was, in our mock tests, we have given some problems which are harder, right? Again, last year in our mock tests, we had one test which was slightly on the harder and lengthier side. When I say harder, I mean trickier questions and lengthy questions. Even this year in our mock tests, some of the questions were slightly harder because they were either trickier or they were slightly lengthier. And when we had this, some students complained. Some students said, hey, why are you giving such a hard question paper? Now, the lesson learned for everyone now is, we should always be prepared for a question paper like set 2, which is the harder test paper, relatively speaking, to set 1 in 2021, because the questions slightly trickier, most importantly lengthier. So from our side, what we will do from this year is, we will have at least 2 mock tests, which will be harder from this year onwards. You may like it, you may not like it, you may complain, that's okay. We want our students to be prepared for all eventualities. We will not compromise on that, right? So you will have at least 2 mock tests this year, from this year onwards, for GATE, as part of your GATE practice, where we will have by hard I mean trickier questions and lengthy questions, so that you are even prepared for the eventuality that you might have a set 2 like question paper next year or the year after that, right? So that's a great lesson for all students and also us. Okay, let's stop complaining. Let's also prepare for a harder paper from now on. But as far as 2021 itself is concerned, don't worry. Normalization is a very valid statistical process, and let the experts do their job.